This is Christina Barr, and you're watching Black Tea News. Hello, welcome to Black Tea News. I'm your host, Christina Barr. I'm kind of tickled because when I started to log on and do everything and prep for my show, I noticed I got a little notification from Facebook that said I had broken community standards and I probably wouldn't be able to post for 24 hours. Now, I did appeal it, so I don't know if they accepted the appeal so quick. So I'm a little surprised that I'm apparently streaming on Facebook right now, but let me tell you why someone was upset. Someone posted a comment in one of my videos about being pro-life, and there was a person who was lied to by the abortion industry, coerced basically to get an abortion, etc., blah, blah, blah. And someone had posted that they believed that men should get mandatory vasectomies. Now, I obviously think this is stupid. And then they're complaining because people always want to talk about women. They don't talk about men. The reason why people always talk about women with abortions is because women are the ones who have abortions. Like, I don't appreciate pro-choice men. I can't stand like pro-choice men who are just really, really, really pushing for it. Like, and some of them had said the most vile things to pro-life women. So it's not that I'm only find women annoying in this situation, but if women want the full power to be able to do this, then people are going to talk about women and holding them accountable. So, and then a vasectomy, that's a prevention thing versus like abortion is you've had the baby and now you're taking their life. So like it doesn't correlate, and it's so I don't have a nicer word than stupid to say. It's just dumb. And so I made a suggestion in all caps with a word that starts with the W and then there's an H, and and I said they should stop doing this word around, and and they appreciate that. I'm like, you guys can say that men need mandatory vasectomies, and then they said like until they get into a committed relationship. I'm like, just stop sleeping around with people that you don't have kids with. Like, it's not that hard. But apparently they can say that men should get like mandatory or forced vasectomies, but I can't use some not even like cursing language because I don't do that, but just I'm just not saying the words because I don't want to get flagged or something again. But that's like something they can't take and they gotta like report. It's annoying. It's annoying, but I'm here today. Just wanted to let you know I was a little tickled coming in, but thank you for tuning in today at Black Tea News. Today we're going to talk about President Biden has COVID again. That's interesting. We're talking about that. MSNBC, there was a clip on there with Elie Mystal and Tiffany Cross, I think is her name, and they were talking about Hershel Walker and just saying some really racist, vile stuff. And it seems like to me, like they're talking, they have this attitude on the show that Republicans just use black people to say things that appease white people who are secretly racist, but love these particular black people. But to me, it seems like MSNBC hires black people just to be racist to appease other white racists. So like, we'll bring in the Negroes to talk about the other Negroes we don't like. That's what it seems like with MSNBC. And there's been plenty of examples with Michael Eric Dyson coming on saying racist thing after racist thing about different people. Joy Reid saying racist things about people. And they just keep it going. Just keep it going. I don't know if this is her heir apparent with this Cross lady, but we're going to be talking about that today. Also, Hispanics are, man, they're coming. They're coming over for the Team Red, man. There's some polling and it's like neck and neck. with support, according to like a CBS poll, I believe it was. I do have a screenshot I can show you guys. Democrats are in for a world of pain if these minorities just keep like flipping over, man. The Democrat Party is becoming the party of really, really crazy left ideas, the college white educated person who resents religious people and cultural traditions and stuff like that. And um, people are not having it. So they're going to lose big. And I really hope Republicans kind of wake up to this opportunity that they have, but some of them are kind of dumb. So um, I'm saying that as someone who is a registered Republican voter, is going to vote in a Republican primary. So please, all of you Black Democrat, Black Votes Matter, or whatever groups, please stop texting me. I'm not voting for your people. I'll be so glad when election season kind of goes down a little bit, because I do hate all the text. I do hate all the text. I feel like they're so invasive, but I mean, I guess it's how they get to people nowadays, and I guess I understand it. But I pretty much know who I'm voting for, so leave me alone. Leave me alone. Okay, before we jump into everything, I want to just encourage you guys to go to blacktnews.com, check out different articles that we have on the website. Please make sure that you guys check out different merch in the store, like the cool Roe and Casey aborted shirts. Some of you guys got some of those, the Life Wins shirts. We also got other cool stuff like the "You Are Not That Special" mugs. We're going into pumpkin spice season again, so you guys can check out this little chippy Trump uh, I made. We do have the "You Are Not That Special" shirts, and My Money My Business got this cool uh Constitution is Glorious Liberty document, all kinds of stuff you guys can check out in the store. And there's always new merch coming as well. If you like what I do here at blacktnews.com, please consider leaving a donation at blacktnews.com/donate. Everything that you guys can do to support, really, really do appreciate it. A little update on my book. I'm about 20,000 words in. I'm writing a book about abortion. It is from like a biblical perspective. I was talking to somebody over the weekend, was at a friend's birthday party, and so I was just talking about it a little bit, and so they're like, well, are the people going to be able to read it who aren't Christian? And I'm like, well, I did write it specifically for in that perspective, because I do see like a need in it in the church, and also really just to rebut, I guess, these crazy people who keep trying to use scripture, but I guess ultimately don't really care about it. But it is good to have iron sharpening iron, and know how to argue your positions biblically. But also, I mentioned how Dennis Prager, for example, talks about, he doesn't debate with people whether God is real, but he talks about why there's a need for God. So I'm going to talk about the need for particular moral absolutes, and to why it's important to treat everybody as if they have intrinsic value. It's in the best interest of everyone, because if you can openly discriminate and then base rights off of discrimination, hey, you can see how we get things like slavery and other stuff like that. So it goes into that as well. So it's going to be a really informative book. It talks about um not only the biblical perspective of where life begins, but scientifically and what philosophy says, and it just breaks down a lot. So there's a lot of good information on there that we talk about all the time, but I just allow myself to say some more scriptures and stuff. So that is coming along, and I'll be done with it very, very soon. And I will have that in audiobook, and also on Kindle, and also on paperback. So I will give you more information as it's done, and hopefully have like a big release sort of thing that I will plan. I also want to thank Bright Mission Pack. I'm in their studio. If I say something today that triggers you, they don't care. I don't care. It doesn't work like that. Just appreciate that they like to uplift conservative voices, and I appreciate the space. Okay, so you guys know I like to start with a meme, like a funny meme. And I was going through a Grand Old Memes account, and they had a lot with like Tucker Carlson and Trump. Like apparently people were flipping out about them being together over the weekend, like in a box together at some kind of game. And but I didn't want to pick any of those. And there were a couple with Joe Biden and COVID, and so like replacing signs like 0 days without COVID or 3 days without COVID, and stuff like that. And I settled on this one. I settled on this one, and I think this is a good one with Kamala. handing Joe Biden the cone of the 2 scoops of the COVID. And it is it a little weird that there are so many jokes about Kamala just kind of waiting in the wings for this man to go down. I mean, he is up there, and I don't think it's just 'cause his age. I think it's because she's also such an opportunist, and you can just smell the greed on her, the ambition. And I don't knock ambition, actually. I mean, I like the quality of ambition in a man. I find it very sexy, to be honest. But with Kamala, she's just not talented enough to rise to the occasion. As a matter of fact, there's a lot in common with her and Joe. That Joe's been waiting his whole life to get here, and he's bad at his job. And Kamala, has been aiming, I guess, this way for a minute and wanted this. Obviously, ran for president, and she didn't. People didn't like her, so she had to drop out before she even lost her own primary in her own state. And she won't be good either. She's not even a good vice president. So she still wants to be president. So giving him 2 scoops of COVID, um, I thought that was a pretty solid meme. I thought that was, and he likes ice cream. So it's just a lot of thought gone into this particular meme. So that's I think that's a good meme right there. So I I don't think he caught maybe twice back to back. They're saying the medicine he was taking maybe like suppressed the COVID. And then there's also like, so sometimes you might be able to, you might have like dead COVID that they can still pick up in you, and you're not actually going to be sick, or you're not going to spread the virus around, and you might be testing like a long time afterwards. My dad was testing like a long time kind of afterwards, and he was in the hospital for a while when he had COVID. So I don't know. All we know is that he tested, and he's going to be, I guess, hiding in the basement some more, which worked out well for him the first time. Unfortunately, he's still president while he's in the basement, so that doesn't really help us too much. Um, he needs some rest or something before he comes out juiced up on whatever had his eyes all googly last week. If you guys saw that, so yeah, that was my meme of the day. So first things first, before I get to the MSNBC thing, I just want to note, last week I talked about um Marvel Studios because they were at like Comic Con and stuff, and I did a segment where I talked about Namor. And I'm someone who, I'm not what's called a normie, like someone who just watches the films, which I'm not into Marvel really right now because Disney's overall done some really shady things, which I've talked about, and I'm don't want to really invest in them, and I feel like they resent me as a customer, so we're kind of divorced right now. But I have thousands of comic books in my house. I had a Namor poster in my room for the longest time. I like the character. I know a lot of these characters' backstories and stuff. And Namor is someone that I've particularly liked as a character. So for a long time, since been watching comic book movies prior to the MCU universe, even back in the days of like when they had the Fantastic Four movies with Jessica Alba and when Chris Evans was Human Torch, Michael Chiklis and and I don't know how to say his name, but he had his own show and he played an immortal person, and he was in Saving Amazing Grace. Hopefully that gives you enough insight to the actor's name. I cannot think of what it is on top of my head. It's like in my brain, but not quite. So anyway, when we had that cast, I was like, oh gosh, are they gonna have Namor in this too? And who would they get to play Namor? And so I've been thinking about this for a while. And so again, I'm not particularly very interested in the MCU now, but they are having Namor in the Wakanda Forever movie that's coming out the end of this year. And so on the end, that's the poster that was drawn by the wonderfully talented Michael Turner, who passed away some time ago. But man, he could draw, and he made everyone beautiful. But that was his Namor. And this is in the middle, that's the actual picture of actor. And on the other end of that, they're going some kind of Mayan route, and they have like stuff in his nose, a bunch of jewelry and other kind of stuff that Namor doesn't wear. So from the looks of it, they are obviously changing the lore besides the race. And I talked about that in the video. And so there's some negative feedback from people that are just like, oh, you're just upset about the race. I'm like, did I only mention the race change? And the comments and the pushback are so fascinating to me because because people are like, what, why aren't you happy? Aren't you black? I'm like, what does it have to do anything? What does it have to like, let me show you an example. Like, as Marvel Comics fan, as a person who is African American, as a person who's also Mexican Indian, this might be the most cringe video you can watch today, which I think to them I just replied congrats, and just left it at that. I don't care if they're offended, but someone said, I'm sorry, but I found this nothing short of disgusting and racist. So what if they didn't pick a white actor for Namor? It's high time these movies had more inclusion and diversity. It's sad that this backlash is coming from someone who is herself a person of color. I I know this character. Like, it's so, isn't it interesting that me as a black person could still enjoy this character of Namor without him being black or without him being Mexican or whatever. He's a mixed individual. He's half Atlantean and he's half white. His dad's name is Leonard McKenzie from Boston. So people are like, oh, he's not white. Yes, he is. Yes, he is. He's not Mexican in the least bit. Okay? It's not so weird that people grow up looking at particular characters and the comic books are the narrative and you see the pictures. So it's not like you could just ignore what you've been reading your whole life and then you want to see an on-screen adaptation and it's not the person. Why is that so weird to grasp that people want to see accurate representations? Now, if they tweak a thing or two, that's one thing. But why are you gaslighting everybody? And then they say things like I'm disgusting and racist when they're the people who are saying, well, it's about time we've had inclusion. So you're like, this person is white, you're sick of seeing white people, and you're like, it's about time we've had others. Like it's nothing, like it's great if you have inclusion and diversity, but you're doing that at the expense of like somebody else. You're like, because you don't want to see the white people, then you just sound racist yourself. You just sound racist yourself. So I don't understand. I don't understand. There's nothing wrong with liking a character and expecting to see an accurate representation of who they are. There's nothing wrong with that. And people can relate and like characters without them being that race. Now, this actor, he said, I wouldn't be here if not for inclusion. That's what he said at Comic-Con. So he knows he's a diversity hire. Now, if you're the kind of person who doesn't mind a diversity hire because you think it's more important that there's diversity, it is what it is. But not everybody's going to be okay with that. And if in Marvel, they've made more characters. They've always had diverse characters that have been always really great. And sometimes they don't do them justice. Like, we've been waiting for really, really good interpretation of Storm. We've seen Storm a lot, but they haven't ever got it right. Okay? Not really right. So there's that. And Black Panther, it was a good movie. It was like more mid-tier, in my opinion, very overhyped, but I did really enjoy it. I did enjoy it. We had a lot of fun. Actually saw it with a bunch of Republicans, fellow Republicans at an event. I explained that, I think, last week and stuff too. I'm not going to go into the whole story, but I enjoyed it, the movie. And I've been waiting for a representation on screen of Black Panther longer than these normies have. And they did a lot of things right. They did a lot of things. They did some things I was like, eh. Like, they didn't really have T'Challa be particularly intelligent. Like, he's well traveled and studied and stuff. It seemed like they kind of nicked that a bit to him to give it to his sister. So I'd make her a little bit more special. I don't know. But overall, good film. Inclusion is great. Marvel's had inclusive great characters for a very long time. And then they keep making more. And that's great. That's fine. You didn't have to change Namor. But they did what they did. And if I notice and I talk about it, that doesn't, and if I don't like it, you don't have to say, but you're black. As if that should just make me okay. And with the race swapping, I don't like it. I don't, and it just shouldn't matter if I'm white and I'm black or whatever. Especially if people are doing it because it's some kind of diss at white people because you've seen too many white people. Not to join more white people on screen. Like you have to take someone who was a white person and you have to change them. That's what it is. So I don't know, people can't see that their own crap stinks. And I'm going to show you this other comment before I move on. So I don't want to talk about this too long because I want to talk about some other stuff. But so someone said this woman in this video should be ashamed of herself. Ashamed. Stan Lee always believed in inclusion and inequality. Why else do you think he made T'Challa the richest man in the Marvel universe and the one of the smartest? I think somewhat, which they, by the way, I just mentioned that they didn't do that in the film. They did not do that in the film. I think someone forgot to explain to her about the multiverse. Ooh, multiverse. The MCU is its own universe with its own set of characters with their own set of backstories. Just sit back and enjoy the movies. Now, the MCU cinematic universe has its own reference universe, and the main like comic book stories is universes 616. In the Marvel Cinematic Universe, they refer to themselves as 616, which I did not like because I'm like, this universe has a name. It's not 616. I understand the multiverse, and in my opinion, a lot of stuff when they're doing the multiverse is kind of annoying. To say, we can change anything, we can do anything. I think that's kind of annoying. Like, it's cool, like if you read an Exiles book or something and you're traveling between different universes and get to see different things, when you do kind of like a all kind of separate story thing. But when you want to see like some like core storylines adapted, and then you get to just make someone a different race all of a sudden, and you just be like, and that's your excuse, like, well, this is a multiverse. Okay, but they're never just gonna do an honest representation of Namor to the most accurate, and you're just gonna say, hey, it's a multiverse? There was a multiverse Namor in an Exiles book where Black Panther and Namor were basically fused together, so he was black. And actually, that might have been, I don't know if he was actually real or if he was actually a robot from Doom, now that I think about it, or it could have been both. Anyway, but that doesn't mean that when you look up on screen, you're going to say, well, that's why he's black here because of that multiverse. No, people want to see this version of Namor. I think that's the dumbest thing. But here's the kicker. Here's the kicker. What I really want to show you guys. So I said, since it's a multiverse, would you be okay with if Marvel had made all the people in Wakanda white? And they said, if the story was well written, yes. I wouldn't pay to go in the theater to see it, of course. I would wait for it to come out on Disney Plus, just like I did with the Eternals. Maybe they would wait to see if it came out on Disney Plus, but it would never make Disney Plus because the outcry would be so outrageous that that film would never get greenlit. It would never see the light of day. It would never happen. It would be worse than like when Jesse McCartney was once going to play Prince Zuko in the Avatar movie. He did like training and he still got paid for the film, but there was so much outrage because they did so many race changes and stuff that they're like, okay, you can't do it. And then they didn't change the white kids who played Katara and Sokka, who they're like the darkest people on the show. And then they just decided to make the Fire Nation, who a lot of these people are kind of, I mean, they're all kind of based on some kind of like real world like Asian countries and stuff. You would think like the Fire Nation is kind of more like Japanese territory, but they're like, no, we're gonna make them all Indians because that was M. Night Shyamalan's favorite fire bending. They were their favorite benders, so he made it his own race. So anyway, the outrage would be massive, and that it wouldn't exist. So I don't think this was an honest response. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. But just to defend their multiverse, they're going to be like, oh, it's fine if we make the entire nation of advanced black people white. And it would have been okay because it's a multiverse. Like, stop it. Stop it. The logic doesn't flow through correctly. So, anyway, just want to say hashtag still not my Namor. I don't like it. Honestly, off the top of my head, the best actor I can think to probably do this role would be Luke Evans. Luke Evans played, he was in the Immortals film with Henry Cavill. He played Dracula in Dracula Untold. I think he's probably still has his body in shape. Last I looked and stuff, and he's a great actor. That's probably someone more along the lines who would sort of have more the look, the feel, the chops to pull it off. And he's this person, this actor, I can't think of his name off the top of my head, but he's famous for playing a character in the TV show Narcos. And now he says that he's here because of inclusion. And that's what he said in Comic-Con. He said he loves Namor. I'm like, Namor's a cool character. And if they were going to change the character, I can't totally blame him for taking up an opportunity and being part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, because they'll probably get multiple movie deals, etc. probably. So, it is what it is. He took a role, but Marvel isn't being true to their source material, and it's okay if they change some certain things. That's, especially if they make sense to in a way that you can put it on film, and there's just so much comic book lore that people aren't going to hold onto when they go to the theater. So some things changing makes sense, but they didn't have to do this. They didn't have to do this. Could be a great story. Still not Namor, and not apologizing. And whether I'm black or not should not matter. Trying to use my blackness against me, like, it's so ridiculous. Yes, I'm a black person, and I still don't like it, and I have my own thoughts. And I enjoyed Namor regardless of his pink skin that he got teased about because he wasn't blue. Anyway, let's move on. Let's move on. I want to talk about MSNBC. And as I said in my intro, it seems like MSNBC really hires black people so they can be racist. I want to show you what I mean. So there was this clip going around because Elie Mystal, who said the Constitution was trash, is talking about Hershel Walker, and you can hear the guest, the host in the background going, right, agreeing with him with some of the stuff that he says is just really egregious.
Election in Georgia because Walker has the backing of the Republicans. Now you ask, why are Republicans backing this man who's so clearly unintelligent, who so clearly doesn't have independent thoughts? But that's actually the reason. Walker's going to do what he's told. And that's what Republicans like. That's what Republicans want from their Negroes, to do what they're told. And Walker presents exactly as a person who lacks independent thoughts, lacks an independent agenda, lacks an independent ability to grasp policies, and he's...
Yeah, so, yeah, that's... Okay, so Tiffany Cross, Elie Mystal, again, who said that the Constitution is trash. And one of the reasons he says that is because, people in his kind of mindset say it wasn't written for black and brown people. But I'm like, I have free speech just like white people do, and I can have a right to bear arms just like white people do. And I'm pretty sure whatever he would come up with would be trash. But so Hershel Walker, I have noted that I was a bit concerned. I don't think a lot of people in Georgia obviously love him. And so when you have candidates and they're well known, people go like, oh yeah, that would be great because they could pull the ticket just based off their popularity. Now, that doesn't mean that they're going to run away with it because they need to have some credibility. And I don't doubt that Herschel Walker actually is more conservative Republican sort of minded. Um, I don't know how well he'll be able to convey the benefits of all those values and stuff. I've had my concerns on that front, but that doesn't mean that he's like an empty-headed lug. But the broader issue is that they said that Republicans like people like him who are empty-headed in their opinion because they just want the Negroes to do what they say to do. Which I can't say the irony doesn't escape me because if you here's the truth, because if you step away from the Democrat narrative, you get people like Joe Biden who feel comfortable saying things on the Breakfast Club to other audience of Black people. If you don't vote for me, or you even think about not voting for me, or for voting for Trump over me, or something, even the thought crime of thinking it, then you ain't Black. Which at least Charlemagne pushed back and said, it's not about being Black, it's about me and my community and what's best for. And then Joe Biden went into like a lying fit, and he's like, I've been endorsed by the NAACP every time. That lie. And he just says some other stuff that embellishing his record by not telling the truth. And he's said a lot of lies over the years, especially to Black people. He's so disrespectful. If you are not a Republican, they will call you a coons, Uncle Toms, all other sorts of things. So it's the Democrat Party side that expects their Negroes to act a certain way. Now, if you're in a political party, political parties expect everyone to act a certain way because you have to have a certain set of values to have the buy-in to be in the party. If you're not like within the platform, then you're not. They don't want you to be a representative of their party if you don't subscribe to those values. So there's that. But the Democrats act like you lose your Blackness if you are not a Democrat. So when you're talking about who's controlling Negroes, it's obviously their side. It's obviously their side. Now Elie isn't on this. I don't remember if he's on this clip, but this is I think Cross was filling in for Joy at the time on the show, and she had some really disgusting words to say. This was back during the RNC convention in 2020. One second.
Watched the Republican convention and seeing the slew of Black speakers that they had, it really did look like a modern day minstrel show to me. What did you make of it?
Modern day minstrel show. So, very offensive language there. Let's keep going.
Well, there was a tremendous amount of diversity from the sunken place during the RNC. So we have to remember how important it is that they found that whole slew of Black folks. Look.
Sunken place. Another, if you're unfamiliar with the sunken place, that's a reference to the film Get Out. I actually did a video during 2020 that had Joe Biden was saying like crazy stuff, and then superposed with his comments, and then the falling into the sunken place. Again, they treat Black people like garbage if you step off of Candace Owens and other people call it the Democrat Party plantation. They treat you like garbage. They want to take away your Blackness. For so long, they've coupled this idea that you have to be a Democrat and you have to be Black, and you can't be one or the other. You have to be both, so they're talking about sunken place. Like, don't they realize they are the plot to Get Out? Like, like, let's keep going.
Look, this is the thing, Tiffany. You're very correct when you put this out at the beginning. None of these people have any credibility with the black community. None of these people can erase the stain of the president's own racist rhetoric. None of what he was saying made sense. It wasn't just the McCloskeys.
Okay, so let's listen to what he claims are things that the president said, talking about Trump at the time. Now, Tim Scott they hate Tim Scott, man. Tim Scott's been called Uncle Tim. That trended on Twitter once. People call him, one time said he was a house Negro, and he was so funny. He had a tweet. All he said was like a correction. He said Senate because he's not in the House, he's in the Senate. So that was a funny, kind of classy way to respond. But Joy Reid has said some awful things about him. They just hate him so much. And when they passed the tax cuts bill, they're like, oh, he's there and they just needed a black prop. And he's like, I did so much with the bill. Everyone's like that. You don't even like value him as an individual and the work that he put in there. You just see him there and you're like, oh, there's the prop, not understanding that he actually has a job. He actually has a job and he does things. So, man, they really, 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 really hate Tim Scott. And so when they say they have no credibility, they might have no credibility with you. That doesn't mean they're not a credible person. And as far as whether the black community at large, like who gets to decide who's credible with the community at large? Who gets to, like, where's the meeting when they just decide like who gets the black cards and who doesn't? And based off of what? Just what metrics do you use to discriminate against other people? This is why, like, when people say that black people can't be racist, it drives me up a wall. Because people clearly be racist to other black people in a heartbeat. In a heartbeat. And to white people too, but in other people.
They said nothing about Rittenhouse. They said nothing about white nationalists.
Okay, so they said nothing about Rittenhouse. What should they have said about Rittenhouse? Rittenhouse didn't kill no black people. Rittenhouse shot folks in self-defense. One of the guys announced that they were going to like hurt him. One of the guys had a gun on him, traveled farther than Rittenhouse did to get there. Now, there was one guy, they just call him Jump Kick Man. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. Now, he was black. Thank God he didn't shoot him, I guess, because they would have just wanted to throw the book at him, really. But we had this whole big trial. He got off on self-defense, and it was clearly self-defense and always evidently self-defense. And even though the president, Joe Biden, put Rittenhouse in a video and framed him basically as a white supremacist, well, they're mad because he went to a BLM rally, what was supposed to be a peaceful protest, which was actually a riot for days. They're protecting businesses of other brown people. Like, did people watch the sort of chaos that was happening in that town? So they're mad because these people, like Tim Scott, didn't get up and say Kyle Rittenhouse is a white supremacist or something like that. And if they're mad about Kyle Rittenhouse, who else is qualifying as white supremacists? Who else is qualifying in their eyes?
Terrorists, and you literally had somebody up there trying to explain the president saying there were terrible people on both sides.
Yeah, because you people have lied about it ever since it happened. Both people on both sides, and the same transcript you can read or you can listen to, but some people can't stand the sound of his voice. So you can at least look at the transcript and say, because people have been saying he supported Nazis or neo-Nazis when he says, I'm not talking about neo-Nazis. I condemn them totally. So to have this narrative that President Trump supported neo-Nazis, it's just been a lie the whole entire time that a lot of people have believed when he's repeatedly denounced that stuff over and over again. So yeah, it's fine that people want to clarify that people have been lying about that, including on this trash network of MSNBC.
None of what was done at the Republican National Committee was actually for black people. It was for racist white people who are already going to vote for them and to give them a sense that they can feel slightly less racist. But let's be honest, If you were going to vote for Trump, you didn't have a problem with bigotry to begin with.
So, again, the irony of MSNBC and these people coming on there and having these black people come in there is they're saying that Republicans bring in black people to say things that will make white people more comfortable when they go like, oh yeah, look at that Negro saying the stuff I want to hear. First of all, Republicans bring in people who have the same ideology, and it's an echo chamber, just like Democrats have echo chambers. We want to hear the things that we believe. And if you're talking about things that we don't believe, we want to hear them in a way that we can go and debunk them. Like, that's not so strange. And people pretending that it is just crazy. Right, left, we'll both do it, okay? But it's the Democrats who will bring in people on MSNBC so they can say, oh, look at those black people. They're not legitimate black people. They don't have credibility. They're not credible black people. And that's what inflames these white liberals to say the most racist, vile, backwards, savior complex nonsense to everybody. I had a video that did pretty well on TikTok this past weekend, and it was of a white liberal, or I don't know, leftist or Democrat, whatever. But she decided to point out Republicans who voted against the Respect Marriage Act. And or she's like, Republicans who voted against interracial marriage part, and I think this was 3 or whatever. And so they had Byron Donald. She showed Byron Donald in kind of this like music that was like a really bad kind of clarinet sound or something. And then they showed his family, which is an interracial family. So I replied to it and I said, now, why do you think that a black man in an interracial marriage didn't vote for a bill protecting interracial marriage? I was like, come here. I brought the camera close to my face. I'm like, could it be that it's already obviously legal? So he didn't have to do it? And it's a pointless bill? And even if Obergefell goes down under substantive due process, that Loving versus Virginia is still in effect? And if you appeal the Defense of Marriage Act says a man and a woman, that's a marriage. It doesn't matter what race you are, you can still be man and woman marrying each other. So if you want to make a bill protecting gay marriage, it doesn't need to include anything about interracial marriage. Like, and there's other reasons to like oppose the bill altogether. And you can go to blacktnews.com to check out that article, that I wrote about. But at the end of it, I said, but you know what? They expect white women like you to talk about black men like him. So you played your hand, you did your job. Congratulations. But people feel very bold. I was at a event. It was a Juneteenth event up in Lansing, obviously like around Juneteenth. And I was with a friend of mine who's running for Secretary of State, and she's black. And people were very nice, like the whole day. Like even people who, I don't even know if people all the way knew that she's Republican, but people very nice regardless, walking in the neighborhoods and the streets and stuff. And tons of black people, sure, most of them didn't share my party beliefs, or they probably do, but they're just Democrat. We'll just put it that way. And then the only person who was rude was this white guy. And they're like, oh, and he's like, we don't support crazy Trumpers and crazy Republicans. And then he gets elbowed in the chest by the black woman next to him. And then black people across the street is like, you out of order. Like, no, that's not cool. And a lot of people sometimes just respect when you just show up to have conversations or show up to show that you care. So Republicans who just want to be like, oh, it doesn't matter. Like, we're not going to win those votes. Shut up. Go try. At least go try. People do respect and appreciate in some regard. Some people will treat you not great, but a lot of people will respect you showing up. So at least try. And so I know that from personal experience and other people that I've talked to, the people who will, you might a time or two get a comment from black people, but it's the white liberals who will come at you sideways, and they feel empowered by watching stuff like MSNBC, and they hear Black people from their side be so disrespectful to Black Republicans, so they think it's okay. They think it's okay. I've had people argue about the "don't say the you ain't Black" thing with Joe Biden, and they're like, "Well, he's correct." I'm like, "Are you serious? Are you serious?" There's people who really, really, really are empowered by that racism. So when they talk about like getting Black people to hear what white people want to hear, that's what they're doing on MSNBC. Being the shield for the white racists. Now, I know from like being on the Republican Party, they're happy. They noticed I'm Black. Come on, let's be legit. They did notice, but they're happy that there's a Black person who agrees with their values, not so I can be just the face of the Black person saying stuff, but they're like, they think their values are good for everyone. So it's not a thing about using me. I wouldn't care if they like me one way or another. I would still be doing what I do. I don't care if I have to stand alone, I'll stand up for my values. It's always been my thing. But but MSNBC doesn't want people like me, people like Tim Scott, Byron Donald, etc., alerting other people that you can think differently. So what they have to do is to delegitimize them and make them seem like they're a fake Black person. And it's bananas to me looking at the history of the Democrat Party, and people could say they switched. They did not switch. You can look at voting patterns. Like the South just now, like they got red not too long ago. Not too long ago. Even if you look at the Democrat Party platform right now, there is literally a call for open discrimination in their party platform. That people are allowed to discriminate. They think that the laws should be discriminatory toward people. That is what's in their party platform. So you want to talk about racism? They own that. They own that. So I don't know how Hershel Walker is going to ultimately do. They suggested that white people are going to vote for them because he's an empty-headed person that they can just pour ideals into. How about he's a Republican voting on the Republican, he's on the Republican ballot, and they do expect him to vote along party lines, Republican values, and they're going to vote for him because there's an R in front of his name. Just like AOC, I think one time Nancy Pelosi or somebody made a crack like a glass of water could win in her district or something because there's so many Democrats in that district. It's so like overwhelming the numbers. So if you just put a glass of water or something there or a rock and it had a D next to its name, it would win the election over the Republican. That's just like the two-party system. Like a lot of people don't like it, but that's just the R's are going to vote one way, the Democrats are going to vote another. There's some people in the middle, and you got to fight for them. Like that's how our politics work. So people are going to vote for the Republican because they think the Republican is going to support their values, not because he's a useful Negro. But what's the alternative? To vote for the pro-choice pastor? The guy who said, vote for me and you'll get $2,000. That wasn't even true. The guy who's going to rubber stamp Biden's hurtful, harmful policies again and again. Why would conservative-minded Republican people do that? Why wouldn't they vote for Hershel Walker is a better question. It's just the dishonesty is so blatant. But that's just how they are. Moving on, since we're talking about race a lot today, I guess, I want to mention that Hispanics are like looking like they're really going to vote red. A CBS News poll has Hispanic voters like in a statistical sort of tie with Republicans and Democrats. Um, a Hispanic strategist noted that in 2018 that they had like a 40-point like advantage with in the Democrats within the midterm. So this is a big seismic shift. And so when people were asking like why do you think that is, he said economics is one thing that's really important. Hispanics have been really increasing their financial statuses for a while. They are on an upward trajectory. And so, why would they want to vote for people who are going to screw that up, to be frank? Like, when they're talking about like redistributing wealth and just taking from taxing upper class people, like these are like people who are trying to move to the middle class and upwards beyond if they can, and Democrats really sound like they're punishing success to give scraps to people at the bottom to make them shut up and just keep them as useful sort of idiots, I guess. So why would Hispanic voters be for that? Also, another reason is they're not into the woke stuff. Culturally, they're not into it. They don't, no matter how many times you say Latinx, that's not a thing that's resonating with people. They don't like a lot of them are very religious. David French, I mentioned in an article about the God Gap. So there's a lot of like white leftists who um, really resent religious people, but the most religious people like who go to church like every week, like I think it's 47% are black people, and then it's like Hispanic people right next to them. So when you say that you don't like people who are really into their faith, you're talking about black people. You're talking about Hispanic people. Um, Now, why are Hispanic people waking up to this faster than black people? I think that the cultural um, designed to marry race to politics has been historically more aggressively sought out in the black community. Black people see being black as central to their identity. It's higher than any other race. Hispanics are like second, but it's like 85% according to Pew Research. And the media, entertainment, Democrat, like they do all that they can to make it seem like being Democrat is also tied into being black. But they're gonna lose some of their numbers too. There's also the false sort of history that people have, the perception of like Democrats and Republicans. A lot of people really believe the party switch. There's people who don't even know that Abraham Lincoln was a Republican and who was the party who was behind like the freeing of the slaves and all the other kind of stuff. Now, people again will say there's a switch, but I don't have the time to go into it all today, but there's no switch. And there's some things that have changed within the party platforms and structures and stuff, but I don't know. I think a lot of the same things that make Democrats tick kind of still ring true. I mean, if you listen to people talk about how they defend abortion, so many similarities to like the slave trade. I'm not joking. Actually, there's an article on my website you guys should check out. What is 4th of July to the unborn, which takes a lot of stuff from Frederick Douglass's speech and just compares it. And I've done different statuses and stuff. I'm not gonna go. I'm running out of time, so I'm not gonna go into it today. But I can see it. So I wish that black people would sort of be waking up this fast with this shift that we're seeing with the Hispanics, but I'm hoping we get there. I'm hoping we get there. I really hope we do. And apparently there's not as much as sort of the militant fashion like black churches will just vote Democrat regardless of their values or whatever. It's just vote Democrat, vote Democrat. And apparently you're not seeing that across the board with other people as greatly. So we just gotta hope and pray and keep trying, I guess. But this is not good for them, especially since they're expecting with all these people like Democrats would say demographics is destiny, and they believed as more people immigrated in and they get amnesty and etc. that they just had a future that was just going to be the whole country blue. And Republicans were frankly concerned about that, but the more left that they go, the more that they disrespect people's faith, and the sort of values that people grew up with. They're going to turn away from the Democrat Party, especially with incompetence like this and inflation being as high and having no solutions to get out of it. They're going to claim they have solutions. Right now, they have a solution of passing a bill and spending a lot of money and taxing people more, and people are not ultimately going to like that. Maybe they're going to get it passed and fund some green policies and different stuff that they want, but ultimately it's going to continue hurting the American people, and it's just going to they're going to lose the midterm, and it's going to be like a wipeout probably in 2024 if they keep on this trajectory. Now that makes me happy that Democrats are going to lose, but ultimately I just wish that we had competent people leading the country and that we were in a good direction, but unfortunately we're not right now. Unfortunately, we are not. Lastly, I wanted to talk about this article that I read on Sunday morning. I don't know when it was posted, but I saw Elie Stuckley had shared it, and I did share it on my Facebook page, and I saw some people liked it, and I saw someone had read it and said it was a really good article. I wanted to quickly read through it if I can. I know I'm about to go over. It's kind of long. So maybe just I won't, but let me just refresh how big long it was. But it's such a good article that I feel is really needed. Um yeah, I'm gonna read through it. I'm gonna read through it really quick. Okay. This is on LifeSite. My unborn son may not live long, but he still deserves protection from those looking to end his life. To the medical staff, our son was already dead, and our choice was not to abort him. Was just our choice not to abort him was just as unnecessary headache and an expense for everyone involved. I've been involved with pro-life activism since I was a kid, but only this year, as Roe hangs in the balance, has abortion become profoundly a personal issue for me. I was barely old enough to ride a bike when my parents joined Florida Right to Life, volunteering to organize a Jackson County branch. They had no prior experience with issue advocacy or political organization, so they looked for anything they could to find to promote a hopeful message to young women facing what we then called crisis pregnancies. My first distinct memory of our involvement was walking down the side of the littered highway in Mariana, Florida, picking up garbage in 100-degree heat so that we could get Jackson County Right to Life printed on our nearest Adopt a Highway sign. My folks explained everything to us in the most age-appropriate way they could, stressing that every human being was made in the image of God and that even babies who are sick, dying, and unwanted by their parents are still worthy of dignity, love, and care, and definitely worth a few sweaty, smelly hours picking up trash in the Florida heat. Our family was still engaged in pro-life activism 2 decades later when I found my voice in conservative media, writing pro-life and pro-liberty articles across mainstream news outlets and major conservative publications. I also met and quickly married a woman who was equally passionate about defending the unborn and an even more talented writer. Together, we organized pro-life events, grilled presidential candidates on abortion at Iowa caucuses, penned articles, published podcasts, and gave money, time, sweat, and tears to make abortion not only illegal but unthinkable. Most of our writing focused on demonstrating the personhood of the unborn, calling out the legal double standard that abortion creates, and rebutting logical fallacies and outdated science used by abortion proponents. Though we are a Christian family, we rarely bring up faith into the abortion discussion because our moral and logical syllogisms against abortion don't require any religious belief at all. Like many pro-life activists, we got used to hearing about so-called exceptions, rape, incest, fetal normalities and life of the mother. We were informed that our privilege allowed us to advocate for life, while others in more difficult circumstances needed the choice of legal abortion. They insisted that we were not allowed to have an opinion on the morality or legality of any abortion, so as long as someone somewhere was facing a specific hardship to which we could not personally relate. Over the time, over this time, we were also blessed with three little boys. As soon as we found out about each of them, we tracked their growth and watched their development by ultrasound, awed by the miracle of new life. We read to them, sang to them, and prayed for them. Last fall, at a family get together, our boys were playing outside with their cousins when my mom came outside and took a seat next to me on the porch swing. Watching them play, her eyes started welling up. She turned to me and said that she was so glad that I was born, that my family existed. It was a sweet sentiment, but her tone told me that there was more to the statement than was actually said. My mind didn't leave that porch swing for months. At the end of the year, I finally emailed her to ask her what she meant, whether there was more behind the words. There was. I knew my parents had come from a lifestyle of drugs, alcohol, and promiscuity before beginning their walk with Christ about the time I was born, but I never realized how close that lifestyle was to erasing my existence. My mom was the mom in all the typical abortion debates. She had been married early and had one child, then that marriage blew up and she fell into alcohol and drug abuse. A young, impoverished, single mom drifting between boyfriends and struggling to make sense of her life. Along the way, she became pregnant with other children who would have been my siblings, but I never got to meet them. She was poor, she was afraid, she was alone, and she wasn't sure she could care for them. Society had convinced her that abortion was the answer, so she made the appointments and terminated the pregnancies. And then she got pregnant with me. Still poor, still afraid, still alone, she was unsure of if or how she could care for two children. But she told me something that had changed. When I found out I was pregnant with you, she wrote, I was working as a bartender at an airport. I had a long time to think about my former actions. Abortion was naturally on the table, but I was so ashamed of my abortions, probably immediately after the last abortion, or maybe when I saw a billboard with the tiny feet held between the giant adult fingers, a fetus at 10 weeks. I realized that it was a baby, not a cluster of cells, and the child was innocent. I decided I might never have a happy marriage and a good husband, but was determined I was not going to have another abortion. She was still a poster child for an abortive situation, but mom saved me, kept me, and raised me. She couldn't see past her circumstances, but she still chose not to take my life. And as they typically do, circumstances changed. A few months after I was born, she married my dad. They moved out to Orlando to a rundown old farmhouse, and our family learned to clear land, grow food, raise animals, cook, homeschool, and more. They were still poor, and now they were in a strange place where they knew no one, a couple of city slickers learning to run a farmstead that time forgot. But we were a family and we learned and grew and struggled and rejoiced together. And it almost didn't happen. My entire life, my memories, my accomplishments, my family, my children were one pro life billboard away from being snapped out of existence. I wasn't just another child in just another circumstance. I was the exception. I was the hardship, the limitation, the obstacle, the one many mothers would have opted to abort. Suddenly, abortion was no longer theoretical to me. It was an enemy that had threatened my life before I was born without regard to my future desires, hopes, or dreams. All of this was still on my mind a couple of weeks later when my wife excitedly told me that she was pregnant again. We opted for an early DNA test and found out that our little boy, number 4, was on the way, which on one hand meant we could keep recycling baby clothes, and on the other hand meant we would have to dig deeper into our shrinking stack of boy names. We eventually landed on Zion Alexander, who would follow our other boys in having biblical first names and a middle name, one of America's prominent founders. We joyfully dusted off the baby clothes and recently demoted infant car seat, taking inventory of what we still had what we might need to replace. We joked about more sleepless nights and frantic diaper changes. We tracked every week of his growth and development and shared a joyful announcement to family and friends. At 20 weeks, we went in for an ultrasound and were told that there were some potential problems that we might have to monitor going forward. Having seen some early concerns evaporate with our other boys, we didn't worry too much, just committed Zion to prayer for normal, healthy growth. But normal was not in God's plans for us this time. 1 week later, my wife was at a strawberry patch with the boys when she got a call from our prenatal provider that she needed to come in quickly. They didn't say why. She called me at work, and after dropping the kids off with a friend, we went in together. When we arrived, they brought us back for another ultrasound and spent nearly an hour measuring and taking snapshots of our baby's heart, brain, and more. As usual, we talked to each other and the technician about the baby Zion, joking about his squirms and kicks and melting at the sight of his cute little face and profile. Then, somewhat abruptly, the visibly uneasy tech left and told us a doctor would be with us shortly. We knew something wasn't right and spent the next few minutes in prayer as we waited for the doctor to arrive. But knowing something was wrong didn't soften the impact of what that something was. The scan had found our beautiful baby boy had a number of serious complications with his heart and his brain. Combined with other telltale signs visible in the ultrasound, the evidence pointed to a heartbreaking diagnosis: trisomy 18. My wife and I sat stunned as the doctor explained the fatal condition to us and told us in all likelihood our son would either be stillborn or not live long after delivery. In that moment, everything changed. Months of anticipation and imagination, dreaming of our future with this little one, suddenly turned into questions we had hoped to never ask. In the unthinkable pain of having to say goodbye to a child who had already carved out so big a space in our hearts. Then, as we silently mourned, the doctor's masked mouth began moving again, letting us in on the reason we had been summoned so quickly. Please don't be offended, but I have to let you know that it's an option to terminate your pregnancy. My mind reeled. We just spent the last hour with the technician and the last 5 minutes with the doctor talking about our little boy. He won't roll over for me. Do you have a name for him? There's his nose, he, him, his. Now, minutes later, in the self same conversation, our son was unpersoned. He was a pregnancy to be terminated, a complication to be avoided, and a threat to my wife's health and mental well being. That immediate dramatic shift didn't happen in reality. Our son was still the same he had been when we talked in the office. He was still just as human and just as alive as he had been every day since conception, the inarguable biological starting point of human life. But a change certainly did happen in the minds of the medical staff. To them, he was already dead. Our choice not to abort him was just an unnecessary headache and expense for everyone involved. I know this because after we emphatically, repeatedly declined abortion and said we wanted to keep him, they continued to offer it in calls and subsequent appointments, even in apparent violation of state law, which bans abortion after 20 weeks. They also never sent our chart or promised appointment request to pediatric cardiology because they just don't do that for trisomy babies. We weren't offered options. We weren't offered care or counseling. We weren't offered hope. Shocked and horrified at the sudden switch in demeanor from our medical team, we reached out to our trusted midwife who had delivered our last baby and was supporting us through this pregnancy as well. She and many other moms and medical folks since informed us that this treatment was common and was bound to get worse as things progressed. We heard stories of parents having to fight for critical tests and ICU procedures and even basic comfort care for little ones who weren't expecting to live long. We were told that many trisomy babies died from malnutrition because they cannot yet nurse and the hospital staff don't want to bother with a feeding tube. Expectations shape reality, and this causes a real problem in an environment where expectations can dictate life and death treatment decisions. As soon as our son was diagnosed with trisomy, he ceased being a baby boy and became a statistic to them It felt like they calculated the likelihood of his death either in utero or shortly after birth and decided that his life was now less important than the relative inconvenience of keeping him alive. Andrew Breitbart was wrong when he said politics was downstream from culture, but it's also upstream and around and within. Politics is one spoke in an ever turning wheel of human civilization, along with culture, faith, family, business, education, and entertainment. Each spoke influences and influenced by those around it. My mother faced in an abortion culture being hoisted up on the shoulders of the sexual revolution. That culture rolled through America's other institutions, leaving deep ruts in the medical field. For doctors and nurses trained since Roe, abortion is just another chapter in the study guide. It's an option to be exercised at the patient's request and frequently less expensive and complicated than the alternative. This is why Twitter is full of people mindlessly repeating abortion is healthcare. It's what they have been deliberately taught by an entire generation of medical professionals and educators. And the posture of the industry toward our little boy shows it. Trisomy babies, from the view of many medical professionals, are a waste of time, effort, and resources. There is pressure to abort these precious children as soon as the diagnosis comes in. Across cases of trisomy, not just trisomy 18, abortion is committed over 95% of the cases, usually before there's even a chance to see whether they're compatible with life or not. There's really no way to avoid calling this what it is. It's eugenics happening right here and right now in America. Our medical industry has judged these children defective, and their parents have judged them not worth the trouble of keeping them alive. I could tell you that these diagnoses are often wrong, or that they shouldn't give up on our baby because there's a chance he could survive. I could tell you stories of families who stared at similar ultrasound reports and then ended up delivering perfectly healthy babies. But that would undercut the universal moral principle at stake here. Our son deserves the best care we can give, even if he is going to die. We aren't oblivious to medical facts. We know that even if our little Zion doesn't have trisomy 18, he has serious complications that may not allow him to live independently. And if he does, in fact, have trisomy, there will be more problems that we cannot yet see. We know his prognosis is grim. We know that he might be stillborn or die shortly after birth, with or without surgical interventions. But my son is no exception in that sense. We are all dying. Every human being is chained to the iron hasp of morality. Some chains just have more links than others. This realization should change the way we view ourselves and each other. The difference between the ICU baby and the elderly war veteran in hospice is neither humanity nor personhood, value nor worth. It's time. One had years of independence, the other may only get minutes. But in those precious minutes, there is care to be provided, love to be given, grief to be borne, comfort and hope to be grasped. We don't know how long our son will live on this earth, but it doesn't matter. He very much is alive and very much a person right here, right now. We sing to him, we talk to him. He responds by kicking and squirming. We want him to hear music, to feel laughter, and to know love every single moment he's with us. None of these commitments are products of circumstance, but rather products of relationship and responsibility. We love and care for our children. That's what it means to be a parent. Abortion advocates keep reminding us that there's a huge variety of difficult circumstances that can apply to pregnancy. And there certainly are. Some babies are conceived in rape, some in incest, some are born into poverty and hardship. Some, like our little Zion, have genetic defects and malformed organs and are unlikely to live long. Many more will be born into poverty, substance abuse, and broken homes where they will likely experience pain and sadness for at least a while. But while these circumstances are typically part of the argument for abortion, I think they actually undergird one of the most persuasive cases against it. Life confounds our attempts to predict or limit the reach of human potential, regardless of origin and history. is replete with men and women who overcame terrible disadvantages to become heroes and icons. But whether or not such exploits are likely for any given child, such hope actually forms the weaker arguments for life. The stronger argument lies in the simple, morally intuitive truth that when someone is facing hardship, pain, or death, it is incumbent upon decent people to shelter, provide, heal, and love while we can. Shouldn't those most exposed to the hardship, pain, and evil of the world also get a chance to see good? If our baby will only experience a few hours of life outside the womb, where he will feel pain and fear before slipping into eternity, doesn't he deserve every bit of peace and protection we can muster now? Should he not be completely and legally protected from another person seeking to end his life permanently for their own convenience? Shouldn't children conceived in rape or incest discover that not all life is violence and trauma, and that there can be healing after harm? Shouldn't babies born in poverty have the same chance to find out that poverty doesn't equal misery? To learn that even if their circumstances never change, they are just as likely to experience and cherish things like family, creativity, community, and faith, gemstones of human happiness, most often minded far under the fertile subsoil of wealth and ease? Should we welcome the poor, the weak, the vulnerable, and the dying into our world in order that they might also know peace, love, and hope? My mom didn't know what my future would be. In her circumstances, it was hard to imagine that anything but hardship and heartache would come from my birth. But she realized that once I was conceived, she and I were in this together no matter what. Her hardships would be mine too, and my pain would be hers. And it still is. My mom and dad still cry when I suffer and still smile when I laugh. Has glued us together. I don't know what little Zion's future will be. I don't know if he will beat the odds and survive his condition beyond birth. I don't know if he'll ever walk or talk. I don't know if he'll ever know that it was my voice that sang to him in the womb. But we are bound forever as father and son, and I owe him the same love and care I give our other boys. My wife and I are not choosing whether to be Zion's parents. We are already his parents, and the only choice left to us now is what kind of parents we will be. Because at the end of the day, there are no exceptions. In order for exceptions to exist, there must first be a rule. No snowflake is exceptional because every snowflake is unique. There is no normal against which to determine exceptionality. In the same way, no human being is an exception because humanity is not standardized. Our talents, our lifespans, our personalities, perceptions, and experiences are unique in history. Individual human beings are not exceptional. Humanity is exceptional, and we are exceptional in that we are human. And that's why the rule must be life. That was such a good article. That was such a good article. Prayers for his little one. Prayers for his little one. I think that was the author was Joel Curtinus. I don't know how to say his last name, but it's such a good article. As I said, prayers up for him and his little one. But I've said that, you know, at least if children are sick, sometimes doctors are wrong. A lot of the time doctors are wrong. I've heard so many stories, like comments of women have told me like my doctor said my baby would be deformed, my baby wouldn't live, etc. And they survived and they were fine, perfectly healthy. So sometimes doctors are wrong. There are people who have abortions for the kids if they find that they have Down syndrome. When people who have Down syndrome, it was reported that they're like 98% of them are happy or something, like really, really crazy high statistic of happiness. Though I understand that it would be difficult. I'm not saying it wouldn't be difficult, but to just wipe people out because you perceive they'll have a difficult life is just it's eugenics. And if they are going to pass away, you could at least give them the dignity of a normal death. But the way that he put it in the personal experience with him and his family was just really powerful. So I hope you'll share that article. I did share it on my Facebook page. I think I retweeted it. I'll maybe clip this section out. If you guys want to share the video of me reading, because I know not everybody's gonna read it, but maybe people will watch someone else read it. Then that's why I read it, because I do really feel that it was a really powerful article. So they're still human beings, and just because someone is vulnerable, and that's what it seemed like, they argue that because someone is vulnerable, that's why they don't deserve a right to life. And I don't think that people like to think of it in that sort of means, but isn't that what we're doing? Isn't that what we're doing? So it is incumbent upon us to protect life. And I know that people naturally feel that way, because the same people who will be for abortion will say we need things like universal health care, whether you want to pay for it or not, because they feel that we have an obligation to each other. And I still believe we can not be for like socialized medicine and still help other people with charity and other things like that. I just don't think the government has our best interest at heart. So that's my concern with it. But we do all acknowledge that we have some kind of obligation to each other. So we shouldn't just throw away people because they're vulnerable and weak and need our help. That's when we should stand up and do the right thing. So it was a really great article. I want to thank you guys for joining and listening, hanging on. I hope you guys enjoyed the show today. Please visit blacktnews.com. Check out different content I have on my website, different articles that I've written a lot of pro-life content myself. Please check out different merchandise that we have in the store, like the I'm Not the Victim You're Looking For. And I also have the shirt, My Money, My Business. Now, I made this shirt because people will say it's not any of your business, whether someone has an abortion or something like that. And I'm like, my taxpayer dollars are pretty much involved in this, though. And they're really, really trying hard to get rid of the Hyde Amendment. And in New York, they want government funds to be able to help with abortions. And in California, they're going to be like a tourist state basically for abortions, and taxpayer dollars are going to go into that. So it's not, people were saying it's a private, there's more funds involved in it than that, but it's really not a private issue between a woman and her doctor. And people aren't really fighting for women, they're fighting for the institution of abortion. Like, my governor came out against like pregnancy crisis centers, vetoed a lot of like pro-life legislation the other day. Elizabeth Warren is upset that in her state that pregnancy crisis centers it's outnumber them like 3-1. I'm like, what kind of normal person would be upset about that? But they want to protect abortion. They don't want to protect women. So we got to keep up the good fight, guys. If you enjoy what I do here, please consider going to blacktnews.com/donate, leaving a donation. There are all costs associated with what I do and streaming and websites and all that kind of other stuff. So if you would like to support, I really appreciate anyone who does, whether it's a small gift like $10, $15, $20. If you want to do more, you're more than welcome to do more. That option is also always available to you. If you don't want to or don't feel that you can, with inflation being high, etc. I just appreciate people sharing the post, sharing the videos, letting other people know about Black Tea. Make sure that you are liking, that you are following, that you're subscribing on my Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube. All my handles are at Black Tea News. It's black like the color tea, like the drink. The only one that's different is Twitter. That one's at True Black Tea. That's also my backup TikTok account. God bless you guys, and I will see you tomorrow.